All right, hello, Texans for the Arts advocates and friends. This is your Associate Director of TFA, Chris Kiley here, and I'm joined today by our fearless leader, Executive Director Ann Graham, and our lobbyist for Texans for the Arts, Shannon Ghangurde. Today, we're going to be giving you a couple of brief updates about the American Rescue Package, some things going on, and then I think we're going to be talking a little bit about an update concerning what might come next as we reach the end of this session, rumors of a special session, etc. So with that, I'm just going to throw it over to you, Ann, and we'll just get started here.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Happy to be here on our weekly Wednesday Advocacy Arts Update, sort of the snapshot of what is most timely, what's happening up to the minute. And happy to be here. But there's just, 4 days left of the legislative session, ends on Monday, May 31st. So Shannon's going to give you an overview of some very great news that we have to share, and also just like what happens in these next 4 days regarding bills and budgets and all the things that the legislature must do before it wraps up. Before we turn this over to the legislative to the end of the 87th session, I want to bring up again for the fourth time, if not more, and continue to bring it up to all of you to pay attention to the American Rescue Plan, ARP, American Rescue Plan, Act, ARPA. Pay attention to this. We have been talking very seriously to all of you out there across the state. Your cities, your municipalities, your counties are receiving federal resources from the American Rescue Plan. This was the act that was signed by President Biden on March 11th. And to the state of Texas, a $16.7 billion appropriation or allocation of funds, and to municipalities over 50,000, $10.6 billion. Those monies are already making it to the state, and municipalities are making decisions already about how those funds are going to be used. Why are we talking about this? Because the arts and culture sector is well positioned through your advocacy to receive funding. There are two primary uses for the ARP funding in terms of being eligible to receive them. And one of a critical one is support public health expenditures. Number two, most importantly regarding the arts and sector, address negative impact caused by the public health emergency. All of us know that through our communities across the state, that the arts and culture sector and every other sector has been hard hit by the pandemic. First to close, last to reopen. We know that mantra, it's true. We can show economic loss through the hotel occupancy tax. Please go to our website, texansforthearts.com, click on the resources, lots of information there, and we will be happy to help you and walk through in your community ways to leverage support at the municipal level. Very important. This is once in a lifetime opportunity for you and your communities to secure some of these resources and make sure that the arts and culture sector gets some of this very important federal funding. So lots of ways. Treasury just came out early last week with their final set of guidelines. And not only do we actually fit better, because in the guidelines, they articulated the hospitality, travel, and tourism industry as one of the hardest hit, therefore one of the most likely to receive support if asked for. And the arts and culture sector sit within the travel, tourism, and hospitality industry. So again, you can email Texans for the Arts at info@texansforthearts.com, talk to us personally about your community. And again, very important to look up those resources. We get examples of sample advocacy materials, letters, and these campaigns are happening across the state right now in some communities, but we want to see them in every community. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Shannon. The clock is ticking. It's been a session like none others, to think about all the way back to January when the building was the state capitol was almost not even open, to right now, more people, a quick pace as bills are being passed and the end of the session decisions are being made. So we'll want to come back to at the very end and regroup about what lies ahead regarding special sessions. But right now, Shannon's how do we wrap up the 87th? And don't forget to share our great news.
Yes, thank you, Ann. So this has been just a very bizarre session. We've talked about that before on these Facebook Lives. The beginning of session, actually even before that, last summer, just really getting some devastating news from a budget perspective that our revenues were not going to meet projections. We were going to be in the hole. We didn't know how long the economic kind of downturn would last, and just a lot of unknowns. Plus, as Ann mentioned, you couldn't even get into members' offices. And so it's just a really difficult time to try to advocate. And as time has gone by, we've gotten a better economic outlook. We now, I would say most of the people in the Capitol are probably vaccinated at this point, and it's really opened up much more significantly, and it looks a little bit more like regular sessions, including everyone's exhausted at this point. They're working around the clock. They're every night, I feel like either the House or the Senate's on the floor until midnight or 1 or 2 in the morning. And so there's some tired, maybe, slightly grumpy people at the Capitol ready for this to be over. So I will put myself in that category. But what, I'm happy to report is we'd really been following all session, the Cultural District grant program funding. Recall that the House had put $10 million in their base budget, excuse me, and the Senate had actually cut us to $6 million. We were cut by $4 million. The House kept that version, that $10 million in all the way until the conference committee. The Senate kept their $6 million all the way into conference committee. So we've been really advocating and working hard to try and convince the conference committee to adopt the House version, which is the 10 million. And so, excuse me. So late last week, we were very happy to learn that the conference committee did adopt the full $10 million in funding for the Cultural District program. They went with the House version. We were very, very excited about that. It's significant for a couple of reasons. One, last session was the first time we really got that $10 million appropriation. And so it was really important to get 2 sessions in a row of that 10 million. We want to really start to create that idea that that is a base level appropriation for the arts and for these programs. And so kind of having those 2 in a row, we think is really, really helpful. So, and then also just where we started with it being such a tough economic cycle. We've talked about this before. A lot of times the arts is something that just gets, unfortunately, cut as seen as an extra. And so that was something we really were fighting against. So we're very excited that that 10 million is in the final version of the conference committee report. So what happens is once the conference committee report is finalized, both the Senate and the House have to adopt that conference committee report. The Senate adopted the report today. It's official. It passed 31-0, along with the supplemental bill, which shores up the current biennium appropriation. The Senate had, I just want to blank on the word, made an exception to the rules, suspended, sorry. They suspended the rule that the budget has to sit out for 48 hours. So that's why they were able to take it up today. The House is not going to suspend that rule. And so it will not be eligible in the House until I think midday tomorrow. So we'll very likely see the House adopt the budget tomorrow. And then once it's both adopted, it will go to the governor for his final review. The governor will have 20 days from the end of session to do something called line item veto. He can veto pretty much anything in the budget. He can't add anything in, but he can take out. And so one thing we will be making sure of and continue to advocate is that the governor does not veto any portion of that funding. When the original program was put into place, it was put in at $10 million, and the governor did veto it from 10 down to 5, with the explanation that it was growing TCA's budget, Texas Commission on the Arts budget, too quickly. And, we disagreed with that. And the idea was these are pass-through grants, so you're not really increasing TFA's FTEs or their workload. But alas, it was reduced and we had to come back next session. And eventually we got the funding back up to 10 million, like I said last time. So we feel like it's established. So I don't think that same reason will exist, but we will work with the governor's office to help prevent against a line item veto on that $10 million. That's all I was going to say on the budget from this cycle. And I was about to turn to the American Rescue Act Fund conversation. Is there anything else on the Cultural District that you wanted to mention?
No, all I wanted to say is that for the cultural districts, of which there are now 48, again, this is the Texas Commission on the Arts program, and it existed for 10 years before we ever secured funding 4 sessions ago for the first time. So this, then it's grown in magnitude as municipalities and arts leaders and business leaders understand the economic impact and the value of having these cultural districts. So we're excited to see that growth. June 15th is the magic date where the next round of proposals for cultural districts that are already in existence to apply for funding. And we encourage all those eligible organizations to do that because we want to show the legislature how well invested these resources are. It's also the deadline for the next round of applicants of municipalities who will be applying for new cultural districts. And there may be close to 9. So you'll see that the program is still growing. So it's exciting to see this program now be back at the $10 million level. And as Shannon said, it's just something we want to build on in future sessions. There'll also be, I don't know, maybe Shannon, where you can just touch, we're watching a couple bills still. There's a county hotel occupancy tax reporting bill, Senate Bill 1655 we've been watching. And then there's House Bill 2139, which is to add classical musicians to the Texas State Arts Awards. And I'm remiss and have to go back and follow those, but the bill passages will be happening up to the bitter end as well, I guess. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. And there's other bills that we're following as well. So we know that the clock is ticking on all of that. So
I will mention to that point, Ann, today is the last day for bills to be heard in both the Senate and the House. There's a nuance there in terms of on each side what can be considered. But after today, the only thing that is able to be considered, but for some suspension of the rules, is conference committee reports and accepting or rejecting amendments from the other chamber. And so if a bill has not gone to, through both chambers after midnight tonight, it's considered dead at that point. So we'll keep you posted. On the American Rescue Act, Ann's talked a lot about the money flowing to the cities and the counties. There's also a pot of money that's flowing to the states. The state, I think all total, is going to receive over $40 billion from the American Rescue Act for a variety of purposes. A lot of that is for education and for higher education, some block grants for some health and human services needs. But there's also a $16 billion chunk that we've talked about before, the State Fiscal Relief Fund. And there's been a lot of conversation during this legislative session on who gets to decide how that $16 billion is going to be spent. Is it going to be the governor, kind of like what happened with the CARES Act money back in 2020, or is it going to be the legislature or a combination of both? There was a rider in that was placed on the House floor on the budget that said it's going to be the legislature. The legislature gets to decide how that money is going to be spent, and the governor must call them into a special session. That rider was taken out of the conference committee report. I think that made some of the House members unhappy. And you then saw the governor send an email out saying he was going to call a special session for redistricting already in September or October, and that he would put the $16 billion question on the call and that the legislature could talk about it then. I understand that there were some still concerns expressed, and last minute they added in a rider into the final version of the conference committee report in the budget that says for that discretionary funding, that the legislature will come back in and decide in a special session. The belief right now is that special session will happen in September or October when we have the census data and the information needed for redistricting. However, like in all sessions, we're down to the end and the House is blaming the Senate for things. The Senate is blaming the House for things. There are several bills that died on House calendars last night because they ran out of time. And the lieutenant governor on Twitter this morning called on the governor to call a special session right away in June to take up some of those issues. Now the House might be reconsidering some of those. So there's a whole bunch. I've looked that way because it's on my TV right now in the background. So there's a lot of question marks right now. But this happens every session. But right now where we are is the lieutenant governor is asking for a special session right away in June to take up some of these issues. Some of those issues may be resolved, some may not. But it's possible that we could be here before September and another special. Hopefully we get a few days of sleep before then, I hope. Or hopefully we don't have a special session at all. So a lot to be determined between now and next Monday. But what we do know is that the budget's been adopted on the Senate side. It will hopefully be adopted tomorrow on the House side, and that our funding for the 10 million is there. And then what we also know is that they are not spending any of the American Rescue Act, so with that 16 billion in this budget. And so our efforts that we have been working on to try to use some of those resources for the arts community are still very much alive and well. And we need to, as Ann talked, what are the next steps? We need to use the time between now and when there is a special session on how to spend those dollars, just continuing to advocate, coming up with our message, grassroots efforts to work towards hopefully getting some of those resources dedicated to the arts community. But we'll know a lot more next Monday in terms of just where we've all landed. But those are the known, and those are the known facts that they're not spending that between now and next Monday. So, Anne, what am I missing?
That's a lot. Make me
I
tired
know.
about all of it, and I know the feeling. So that's going to be the wrap up. Just two quick things that I'll make an announcement on behalf of one of our member organizations and one of our partners called the Texas Association for Symphony Orchestras, or TASO. They give an annual Legislator of the Year Award of Excellence. And because of the COVID pandemic, we were not able to convene in 2019, or excuse me, in 2020 and or now to give these awards out. So we did, however, nominate, and they supported the nomination and election of two of our Texas legislators. One is Representative Oscar Longoria, and the other is Representative Gio Capriglione. And we will be honoring them on Thursday and Friday for their excellence and their support of actually the budget process from the previous session, which now seems like history. But I just wanted to give them both a shout out for the support that they and the role they played in the House appropriations process, which helped us secure the $10 million last session. So a shout out to them. And we will be, again, presenting the awards. We'll be showing them on our Facebook page and the TASO Facebook page as well. And then last but not least at all, again, next week, every Wednesday, and sorry, we ran a little bit over today. Next Wednesday, June 2nd, I believe it is, we will be having a guest, Lauren Hanley, who is the staff member from the Houston Arts Alliance, who oversees all the disaster preparedness information. And she'll be talking with hurricane season approaching us, and with polar vortex and bad weather behind us and COVID behind us. We'll be talking about the materials and resources that are available to help artists and arts organizations be prepared in advance of and be prepared for disaster recovery. So join us next Wednesday at 4 o'clock, and we'll look forward to sharing that. And we'll have a few updates also on the session. And again, ongoing, you're going to hear us talking about ARP and ARPA until those funds are used up, because we absolutely want y'all to be in line for those resources. Well, thank you. And thank you, Chris, for hosting us as well. And we'll see you next week.